Welcome back to Kalinga Games. Today we are continuing our Series 10 Restricted Series. As you can tell from the beautiful Pokemon behind me, this week we are doing Mewtwo. Mewtwo used to be hands down the strongest Pokemon in the game back in Red and Blue days, back when Psychic was the best typing imaginable. It has fallen off a little bit since then. I don't know if you've heard of a particular Pokemon called Calyrex, but it kind of does most things Mewtwo does, but better. So I had to find the niches that Mewtwo has and kind of build around that. I personally prefer Mewtwo over Calyrex, but I do really like Calyrex too, so it's a tough choice. The deciding factor is that I have a shiny Mewtwo that I caught in Sun and Moon, which was a full odds shiny, and I wasn't even hunting for it, so it's got a special place in my heart. So without any more rambling, we will go ahead and get into the battles. So I hope you enjoy, and I will have a rental code and a Pokepaste at the end of the video and in the description. Alright, so getting into the first video, or the first battle. Our opponent has a Necrozma Duskmane, a Grimmsnarl, a Rillaboom, a Regieleki, an Incineroar, and a Primarina. So they have the pretty common core of Rillaboom, Regieleki, and Incineroar, but the rest of their Pokemon are pretty unique, or at least in teams I've ran into so far in Series 10. So what I go ahead and do here is I lead my Entei, eventually, and my Lodic with Stakataka and Mewtwo in the back. My Lodic is really underplayed right now. It is probably the best Incineroar counter that you can run, in my opinion. But Rillaboom causes problems for it. So whenever I lead my Lodic, if the opponent has Rillaboom, I almost always lead Entei next to it. Just because Entei has the ability to, if not KO the Rillaboom, it can scare it off the field. But my opponent leads Regieleki and Primarina here. So Regieleki is another nice answer into my Lodic, which is another reason probably a lot of people don't run my Lodic right now. Because two of the top Pokemon are counters to it, but my Lodic is an amazing counter to the #1 Pokemon in the series, and it's also very, very good into Zacian. So what I do here is I go ahead and Snarl to lower the special attack of both opponent Pokemon, which are both special attackers, and I go ahead and protect my Lodic here. So they do go ahead and Thunderbolt into my Lodic as expected, and we just get the Snarl off and lower their special attacks. And then Primarina just goes for a Hypnosis here, or not Hypnosis, Hydro Pump here. I mixed them up because they have about the same accuracy, but they do hit their Hydro Pump, but thanks to the Snarl, Entei does survive. One important thing to note here is we are locked into Snarl because we were running a Choice Scarf, so we're just going to keep running it. Which is why it's always really smart to calm down on the first turn when you're running this team, and really think about what you want Entei to do, because it's the only thing it's going to be doing for a while. But luckily, thanks to the Snarl, my Lodic does survive a Thunderbolt, and we get to lower their special attacks even more. And then my Lodic lands the Scald onto Regieleki, and we do get the burn. And then we do survive a Dazzling Gleam from Primarina because of the -2 special attack. And then we go ahead and bring in Mewtwo. So the ideal situation with that Regieleki would have been for it to run Electro Web. But I'm sure my opponent knew that my Lodic was competitive, but if they did run Electro Web, we would have we would have gotten a +2 in special attack, which would have been nice. So what I do here is I just go ahead and double protect my Pokemon just to get some burn damage and get that Regieleki off the field. And then doesn't matter what Regieleki does, and then Primarina does Icy Wind, which is a nice reveal and lets me see what their moveset is. But the burn does take out Regieleki, so we are both at 3 Pokemon apiece now. And all 3 of my remaining Pokemon are at full health. So they go ahead and bring in Grimmsnarl to fill in for Regieleki. And what I do here is I go ahead and Psy Strike into the Primarina, and I recover with my Lodic. And then they set up the Light Screen, which is really smart by them. Both of my Pokemon that are left on the field are special attackers, so it's really smart by them to get the Light Screen up. Psy Strike does about 75% damage into my Lodic. I don't know. I think Light Screen still affects Psy Strike, even though it attacks on the physical side, because it's a special move. I'm not totally positive on that, but I do believe that the Light Screen still affects it. But then they go ahead and Energy Ball into the Milotic, which again, thanks to that -2 special attack, we do get very little damage taken on us there. So what I do here is I just go ahead and double protect again, just to get some more leftovers recovery onto my Lodic. And then they switch out their Primarina into Necrozma. So probably you're seeing that damage and seeing that Primarina is basically dead weight at this point. They get it off the field, and they bring in their Restricted, which is very scary. Which is a very scary Pokemon. And then they Thunder Wave into the Mewtwo. So Grimmsnarl can be very, very annoying, especially when it's running a Thunder Wave set. It's not as annoying as the Trick sets are, but it's still pretty bad. So what I do here is I go ahead and switch out Mewtwo into Stakataka, and I Scald into Necrozma. And then they do the Thunder Wave into the Stakataka, so that is definitely preferred over having Mewtwo eat a Thunder Wave. Because Mewtwo we want to be as fast as possible. Stakataka, we actually like it when it's really slow, so they actually sort of does us a favor. We do have the chance of not attacking, but the lowering of the speed on Stakataka thanks to Paralysis is not a big deal. And then they Dragon Dance with their Necrozma, which is amazing. I did not even know Necrozma got Dragon Dance. I was 100% expecting it to run Trick Room, which is why I switched in Stakataka. But they are actually running a speedy, physical attacking Necrozma, which is just wild in my opinion. And their Necrozma also is shiny, which I really like the shiny for Necrozma's forms. I don't necessarily like normal Necrozma shiny. I don't really like the blue over the black, but with the like pink and red light, I just really like that. I think that's really cool. So then they go ahead and set up Reflect, and they do another Dragon Dance with Necrozma. So at this point, they have offset the burn damage output, and we get paralyzed with Stakataka, so we are not under Trick Room here. So what I do here is I go ahead and run the Trick Room again, just to try and get it up, and I continue to Scald into the Necrozma, trying to get as much damage on it as possible. And then Grimmsnarl decides to keep being a Grimmsnarl and paralyze my Milotic. And then they actually have Moonlight on their Necrozma, which is a very interesting set. I'm not sure exactly what the full moveset is, but they have Dragon Dance and Moonlight, which is just amazing in my opinion. And then this time Stakataka is not paralyzed, and we do get the Trick Room up. So at this point, even though Necrozma is increasing its speed in Trick Room, I'm still very concerned about its attack output, because it's now higher attack than the burn offsets. if that makes sense. So it's doing more than neutral damage now. So what I do is I go ahead and double up into it with Gyro Ball and Scald, which Gyro Ball does not do as much damage as I was hoping. I was hoping with all the speed boosts they had that it would do a lot more damage than that, but with it not being very effective and Necrozma having pretty good defense, it's not going to do a whole lot. Luckily they do Spirit Break into the Milotic slot and increase our special attack, which is very good. So now we are at +1 special attack, and they are at +4 attack, +4 speed. Which also doesn't increase the damage of our Gyro Ball. So they've actually increased our damage output this past turn. So we go ahead and just Gyro Ball Necrozma and Scald Necrozma and really bank on not getting paralyzed. Getting paralyzed would ruin my plans right now, because they have that recovery option. Okay, so they decide on their moves, and it does not really matter because we do hit the Gyro Ball, and we do hit the Scald to take down Necrozma. And without Necrozma, they don't really have a lot of damage output into my team. I think they were trying to heal and boost until Trick Room ended, and I don't think they expected my Pokemon to do as much damage into Necrozma as they did. And I'm sure they were not expecting a burn. I'm sure that kind of ruined their plans. But always good to get the restricted off the field. And then they go ahead and bring in Primarina, who does not have a whole lot of health left. And we do confirm that they have the Light Clay. So what I do here is I go ahead and Gyro Ball into the Grimmsnarl, and I recover my Milotic. And they go ahead and cancel. So good game to my opponent, and we will go ahead and hop into battle number 2. Alright, into battle number 2 against Prevail, who has a Pheromosa, a Hitmonlee, an Urshifu, a Calyrex Ice Rider, a Porygon 2, and an Amoonguss. So in this game, the one thing that terrifies me the most is them getting up Trick Room. More for the Amoonguss actually than the Calyrex. So what I do here is I go ahead. I was going to bring my loaded Stack Attacka, but I didn't know if Stack Attacka would be able to take on the Calyrex, because Calyrex usually has high horsepower, which would be a one-hit KO on Stack Attacka. We have a Chople Berry on it, which reduces the damage for fighting type moves, but the ground type moves that Pokemon use will still happen. I chose the fighting type because Urshifu runs around everywhere, so I figured that would be the better tech to watch out for. So what I go ahead and do here is I bring Entei, Whimsicott with Mewtwo and Milotic in the back. Even though there's not as much of a chance here of an competitive boost, Milotic still has a very good matchup into Calyrex, and it can burn it, which is always amazing. And there's not a whole lot, other than Rillaboom, there's not a whole lot of physical attackers that do hit Milotic super effective. So again, it's just really underrated. I really like it. It kind of brings this whole team together. So what I do here is I go ahead and Sacred Fire into the Pheromosa and protect the Whimsicott. Because this Entei is Inner Focus, so it cannot be flinched, which I'm expecting Hitmonlee to do Fake Out here. It's not as common, but it does have the same, I guess, capability to run it. I don't know. It can run Fake Out just like Hitmon Top can. And if you've seen my previous videos, you know that I'm a fan of Hitmon Top. So they do try to Fake Out, but we protect. And then Entei, thanks to the Choice Scarf, outspeeds Pheromosa and gets a one-hit KO with Sacred Fire. So I think that kind of surprised my opponent. Obviously you can't know I'm running Choice Scarf on turn 1, so that was a good little surprise there to throw at them. So they go ahead and bring out the Urshifu, in Pheromosa's place, and we do find out it's the water form. So what I do here is I go ahead and switch Entei out into my Milotic, and I Encore Hitmonlee to lock it into Fake Out. So Entei comes back, and my Milotic the Sociable takes the field. And Hitmonlee actually uses Wide Guard here. So that is really cool. And it also stops me from encoring it into Fake Out, but it does lock it into Wide Guard. So effectively it's the same because neither one of my Pokemon are spread attackers. And then they go ahead and get a Surging Strikes into my Milotic, which this Milotic is max HP, max defense, so that does very little damage. And we have leftovers, so we recover about a quarter of what they did to us, so we're not really worried about it at all right now. So what we do here is we go ahead and Scald into the Urshifu, and we Moonblast into the Urshifu. Because the Hitmonlee is either doing nothing effective, or it's switching out, so we are not going to focus on it too much. And then they actually switched it out into Calyrex. So maybe I thought too quick there, because that switch out was pretty obvious, and we would love to get a burn onto the Calyrex, and then they actually detect with the Urshifu. So they actually read me pretty well there, and they read into my detect or Encore strategy really well. So what I do here is I go ahead and switch my target, Scald into the Calyrex, and I go ahead and Encore into the Urshifu. Now they know I have Encore, so there's a good chance they're switching out, which they are, but having Encore and just being able to force them to switch in and out, that is a huge plus, and it's really kind of, if you Encore into the right move, it's really effectively putting them to sleep, which I really like. Whimsicott is not the preferred Tailwinder for a lot of teams. A lot of teams has Tornadus, but I personally really prefer Whimsicott almost entirely because it has access to Encore, which Prankster Encore is. I'm sure most people are not a fan of it, but I really like it. So what I go ahead and do here is I go ahead and Scald into the Calyrex, try and get a burn again, and I go ahead and protect Whimsicott, expecting a Fake Out from Hitmonlee into it. But again, oh no, sorry, they actually do go into the Protect there. I thought they got it through and hit my Milotic, but oh well. And then my Milotic gets a nice critical hit and a burn on Calyrex. So the critical hit is really lucky. But the burn, Scald has about a 30% chance to burn, so it's not overly lucky to get it on the second attempt. But you can already see just how valuable having that burn is, because Calyrex does almost no damage there. So once again, I go ahead and Scald into the Calyrex, and I Encore Hitmonlee again, just to try to get it locked into Fake Out. At this point, Calyrex is not a threat at all to my Milotic. My Milotic can just sit there and eat up High Horsepowers or Glacial Lances all day. It's just a matter of how many of the teammates can my opponent knock out at this point. So they really take their time thinking here. They obviously know I have Encore. I've been spamming it all game. But they go ahead and switch out the Calyrex into Urshifu here. And I do get the Encore into Hitmonlee and lock it into Fake Out. So we do manage to just kind of ruin their day here and not let them get any moves off. So if you're watching this, I'm really sorry. I know it's a cheese strategy, but it's the best way I can make Mewtwo a effective Mewtwo team. So we do get the Scald onto Urshifu, but no burn. So what I do here is I go ahead and recover with my Milotic, and I get a Tailwind off with Whimsicott. And they switch out their Hitmonlee into the Calyrex. which is already half damage and burned. So I'm not really worried about it. So we do get the Tailwind off. We don't really need it. The main thing this will do is it will let Milotic outspeed Urshifu, unless it goes for Aqua Jet like that. But the big thing here was I wanted to outspeed Urshifu with Milotic and get that recover off in case they were doing a close combat. But they ended up Aqua Jetting into the Whimsicott, which, one, it does not let Calyrex get a knockout next turn, and two, it lets Milotic get that recover for free. So we're in a very, very good position here. We have 3 Pokemon at full health against basically 2.5 Pokemon, with Calyrex being burnt and having no boosts. So what we do here is we go ahead and just Scald into the Urshifu again, and we Sacred Fire into Calyrex. It's really funny looking back that Entei used to be the worst of the legendary beasts, and now it is far and away the best. I just think that's really fun. Where it was always had a really cool design. Raikou's still my favorite, but it's just funny seeing it go from worst to best like that. I don't know. It's just really interesting to me. And I've built 2 teams with Entei so far, and both of them have been pretty successful, so, despite being very off-meta. So we go ahead, and it's not very exciting, but we go ahead and keep Scalding and Sacred Fire into the Hitmonlee slot this time. And then this is the point where we learn Hitmonlee is normal gym fake out, which I have never seen that before. I think it's a really cool strategy. I kind of geeked when I first saw it because it never dawned on me that Unburden plus Fake Out is a great way to get your item off right away. I've always ran Unburden with terrains with a seed, but it never struck me to do normal gym Fake Out. So I may have to try that and run a team like that sometime. Because I think it's a really cool strategy, so I'm going to steal that at some point. And then Milotic flinches, and Urshifu gets the Surging Strikes into Entei, which, no surprise there, Entei goes down too. But that gives us a free switch into our Mewtwo, our nice green Mewtwo. And then we go ahead and, not really much thought required here, we go ahead and Scald and Psy Strike into the Urshifu. At this point, the game is pretty much over, but I gotta give my opponent a lot of credit for sticking around to the end and not forfeiting really early, because there were definite ways to win, but there had to be some luck involved with criticals, and at this point it's over. But really, props to them for sticking around. So then we go ahead and get another Leftovers boost, get almost to full health, and our Tailwind peters out. So I'm sure that's what they were going for. They were trying to get our Tailwind out and then win. But Mewtwo has Psy Strike, which is an amazing move that only Mewtwo gets. And we do get the victory here. But again, really good game to my opponent, and I really like their team, and I'm 100% stealing that Hitmonlee at some point. So we will go ahead and hop over to game number 3 now. Alright, so into game number 3 against an Yveltal team. So my opponent has Yveltal, Stakataka, Gastrodon, Rillaboom, Mienshao, and Volcarona. So a really cool team. I personally have not played against Yveltal, but as you can see just by type matchups, it's a pretty hard counter into Mewtwo. And really the only super effective damage we have into it is Whimsicott and Stakataka. So what we do here is we go ahead and lead Whimsicott and Mewtwo with Stakataka, Rillaboom in the back. But overall, just looking at the teams, this is not a great matchup for Mewtwo. It's certainly winnable. There are things you can do to win, but Yveltal is a very tough matchup for this team. Which that's just how Pokemon goes. There's no perfect team. Everyone's going to have a tough matchup. The key is try to limit the amount of bad matchups you have and make sure they're not the most prominent Pokemon running around. So luckily Yveltal is not a super prominent Pokemon. It's a nice anti-meta pick, but Xerneas will always keep Yveltal kind of on the lower end of the restricteds, in my opinion. But they go ahead and lead Mienshao and Yveltal. So I go ahead and double protect with my Pokemon, just expecting a fake out here for Mienshao, and I'm not sure which one it'll go into. My best guess is Whimsicott, but you never can tell. Sometimes people will read into things. So they do go ahead and fake out into the Whimsicott, and they Tailwind with the Yveltal, which is terrifying. I was not aware Yveltal got Tailwind. I know it makes me sound like I don't play much with these last two battles because I keep saying I didn't know this, but I never expected Yveltal to have Tailwind, and even then, you don't really expect your restricted Pokemon to be your Tailwinder, so really cool strategy by them. I go ahead and switch in my Stakataka, and I Encore Mienshao, just to keep it into the fake out. Because I'm bringing in Stakataka, I didn't want it to be able to run close combat, but I sorely underestimate Yveltal's damage output here. So Yveltal does a big Dark Pulse, and it does over half to my Stakataka, so that is not good. My plan here was to get up a Trick Room, since they set up Tailwind. But with that damage output, it's tough to tell if that was a low roll or a high roll. If that was a high roll, then there's a chance we could get it off. If that was a low roll, then Stakataka is dead. And they go ahead and switch out Mienshao into Rillaboom, which is a pretty good choice. Once you reveal Encore, it's very rare to get it off again unless you got your opponent really on the back foot like we did in Game 2. So they go ahead and get their Dark Pulse off, and Stakataka is not sticking around. And we get a Moonblast here off into the Yveltal, which does half damage. So this was the moment where I realized that I made a mistake earlier, where I targeted down, or I didn't target down the Yveltal right away with Whimsicott. I underestimated how much damage Whimsicott would be doing, and unfortunately Whimsicott would have done enough damage if I would have just focused on damage early. So that's a little frustrating, but I don't know, worse things have happened. We try to fake out their Yveltal, and we Tailwind. Unfortunately, they fake out before us, and they fake out Rillaboom. I should have thought that through. I was thinking fake out and Tailwind were on the same priority levels, but it's not. Tailwind is one step higher, or fake out is one step higher than Tailwind is. So that fake out would have always come earlier. The better move here would have been to bring in Mewtwo instead of Rillaboom, and to protect Mewtwo and Moonblast, because that would have gotten us the KO. And unfortunately I didn't see it at the time. So really good play by my opponent, and this is just my inexperience going up against Yveltal teams. I thought it had more bulk than it did. So learning for the future. But yeah, if you guys borrow this team, don't be afraid to use Whimsicott as an offensive option against the Yveltal. Obviously it's a great against Dark Urshifu, which is really surprising not to see on this team. Usually every time I've seen Yveltal, it's been with a Dark Urshifu, so interesting that they don't have one. But I'm down to my last two Pokemon here, so I go ahead and bring in Mewtwo, and I'm facing down a whole team with just my two Pokemon that I led with. So what I do here is I go ahead and just double protect, expecting another fake out, and at this point, this was another bad decision where I'm behind at this point, so playing conservatively is not going to win me this game. What I should have done here was try to try to guess which one was going to be faked out, and then attack with the other one. Unfortunately, they don't even fake out, so they really got me there, which just goes to show how great fake out is in this meta, where just the threat of it can cause double protects like I just did, and then that just opens up the whole game to just being getting set up moves and just dominating. So we do go ahead and get the Side Strike off into Mewtwo. We learn this Focus Sash, which is fairly obvious. I don't think anybody runs Mewtwo without Focus Sash unless they've got another Pokemon on the team that needs it more. So they do knock off our Life Orb here, but we do survive. So that is another thing. Mewtwo is mostly outshadowed by Calyrex. It does have better bulk. So the fact that it can survive knockoff is a really big benefit when running a Mewtwo team. So what I do here is I go ahead and I protect my Mewtwo. I thought about encoring the Rillaboom, but in the end I decide to Side Strike into the Rillaboom, and I go ahead and Moonblast the Mewtwo. Or, I take that back. Yeah, I protect the Tailwind. I don't know what I was thinking. I gotta move ahead of myself there. So this was my best bet to try and get a Tailwind up, keep Mewtwo on the field, and get some damage output. Unfortunately, they go ahead and knock off my Whimsicott, but they only knock off a Focus Sash, which doesn't do a whole lot. And then their Tailwind peters out. So what I do here is I go ahead and Side Strike into the Rillaboom, and I Moonblast into the Mewtwo. And then they take a pretty good time thinking about the moves. So we Side Strike here into the Rillaboom, which almost gets the KO with a critical hit. If we had our Life Orb, that would have been a KO, which is upsetting, but it was a critical hit, so I would have needed luck in my Life Orb still, so there's not a whole lot I could do. And then they go ahead and U-turn into my Mewtwo after we knock out their Mewtwo, which leaves just my Whimsicott against their entire team. Mostly, other than Mewtwo. But after the last battle, I was motivated to not forfeit. Their Pokemon are relatively low health, so I decide to just go ahead and see what I can do here. They bring back out their Yveltal, which is low health, and they bring back out their Rillaboom, which is even lower health. So it's not unheard of to make this kind of comeback, but it would take a lot of luck. So what I do here is I go ahead and I protect, just expecting a fake out from Rillaboom. It would be pretty wild if it didn't fake out. And it does fake out. So we do get the protect, we don't take any damage here, and they Oblivion Wing into the Whimsicott. So yeah, if I didn't protect, then that's game over right there. Spoiler alert, the game's over, but... So we go ahead and we Moonblast into the Yveltal. What I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to chip away, get as much damage as I can, and see if I can make any kind of comeback. They Grassy Glide here, which does a pretty big chunk of damage. And the Moonblast does take out the Yveltal. Just looking back on it, what I really needed to do in this game, it was a bad matchup, so I should have been more aggressive. And I should have made Whimsicott more of an offensive focal point than just trying to support with it. But, you know, you live and you learn. It's a good thing to know in case I run into another Yveltal team with this team. And we see that their last Pokemon is Gastrodon, which kind of is a wall for me because we don't have any grass moves on Whimsicott. So we go ahead and we get the Protect off here, Grassy Glide, and we find out that their Gastrodon has Ice Beam. So this is 100% a lost cause. There is a 0% chance that Whimsicott can pull something like this back. And we go ahead and we Moonblast into the Rillaboom just to try and see how much damage this does. I'm expecting it to be Assault Vest and it to live this. So we go ahead and we get the Moonblast off, and it does not do enough damage. So we do get the special attack drop, which is a nice consolation prize, and Ice Beam takes us out, and we lose game number 3. But again, I think very winnable game, just didn't play it right. So good game to my opponent, and we will go ahead and hop into game number 4. Alright, so into battle number 4 against Snow, who has a Sylveon, an Incineroar, a Xerneas, a Volcarona, a Regieleki, and an Urshifu. So pretty interesting team, pretty normal except for the Sylveon, which I thought was really cool. So what I go ahead and do here is I lead Stack Attack a Rillaboom with Milotic and Mewtwo in the back. So this team actually has a pretty solid matchup into Xerneas, but that's almost exclusively because of the Stack Attacka. Stack Attacka, if you don't know, is probably the best non-restricted Pokemon other than Incineroar. It can basically serve as a restricted Pokemon for most teams, just because of how good it is under Trick Room. But on this team, it's really just there as a counter to Trick Room teams and to stop Xerneas, because Mewtwo does not have the greatest matchup. But Mewtwo does have the distinct advantage that it gets Psystrike, which is a crazy strong psychic move with Stab that uses the opponent's defense instead of special defense. So Xerneas using Geomancy and getting the boosts does not really bother Mewtwo as much if Mewtwo can get an attack off, which under Tailwind it will be able to get an attack off. So they go ahead and they bring out their Volcarona and their shiny Xerneas with a Dream Ball. So either this person spends a whole lot of time getting the perfect Pokemon or it's hacked. My money's on hacked. So what I do here is first turn I go ahead and I Fake Out into the Xerneas slot, and I go ahead and set up Trick Room with Stack Attacka. And they think about their turn pretty hard here, which I don't blame them for. One thing Rillaboom could be doing here is going for Grassy Glide, so they may want to Rage Powder, but what they do here is they go ahead and protect their Xerneas, and they go ahead and they Heat Wave with their Volcarona, which, thanks to the Assault Vest on Rillaboom and the Stack Attacka's overall bulk, we do live that pretty well on both Pokemon. So on this turn, what I'm expecting them to do is I'm expecting them to Rage Powder. So I go ahead and I knock off into the Xerneas slot and I Rock Slide with Stack Attacka. Xerneas probably is not going to Geomancy here just because it's under Trick Room, but knocking it off and getting rid of the Power Herb helps defend against Geomancy in a long run. So Stack Attacka does get its Rock Slide off, and it does not miss, so we do get a knockout on the Volcarona. Volcarona is a very good Pokemon, but it's 4 times weakness to Rock, and its poor physical defense kind of makes it a liability in Trick Room. But it's still worth having on a lot of teams because of that Rage Powder, and because it's a Rage Powder user that isn't completely passive. It does a whole lot of damage, as you can see by the amount of damage it did to an Assault Vest Rillaboom there. So we do flinch their Xerneas, so we don't get to see what they were going for. My best guess was they were going for either Moonblast or Dazzling Gleam, just because you don't want to set up Geomancy and Trick Room. So what I go ahead and do here is I go ahead and Grassy Glide into the Xerneas. Or I was going to Grassy Glide into the Sylveon. I changed my mind. Eventually. Took a lot more time thinking about this than I thought I did. So what I do is I go ahead and Grassy Glide into the Xerneas, and I Gyro Ball into the Sylveon. Now this may seem weird, but Sylveon's kind of a wild card. It could be running a whole bunch of different things, and even though Xerneas hits harder, Sylveon has a lot of annoying support moves, so I figured that would be the priority. So we go ahead and we knock out the Sylveon, and we get a pretty big damage onto Xerneas with the Grassy Glide. And they go ahead and Dazzling Gleam here, which does a pretty good amount of damage, but because they don't have the Geomancy boost, it is definitely livable on both Pokemon. Actually, with the Geomancy boost, we probably still would have lived with both, but Rillaboom would have been very low health. So they go ahead and they bring out their Urshifu, which is the Dark Urshifu, surprisingly. So we go ahead and we Grassy Glide into the Urshifu, or either way, they cancel, so we win the battle, and we will go ahead and go to the rental code and team preview. So here is the team overview and the active rental code at the bottom there. I will be posting a Pokepaste in the description along with this rental code. But the Pokemon are Mewtwo with Unnerve and a Life Orb, with Protect, Psystrike, Aura Sphere, and Grass Knot. So Psystrike is just its best move. It actually hits Xerneas really hard even after Geomancy, thanks to hitting on the physical side. And it's super effective against a lot of good Pokemon, especially Urshifu Water. Aura Sphere is one of the niches it has over Calyrex. So it actually has the ability to hit Incineroar with super effective damage. And it does really, really well in the Stack Attacka and some rock types as well, and steel types. So it is one of the few things that Mewtwo gets that Calyrex does not, along with things like Ice Beam. But Ice Beam in the current meta isn't as good in my opinion. And then Grass Knot is for Groudon and the Kyogres that you see all over the place. Grass Knot is a guaranteed 100% KO on Groudon, and it is probably a KO on Kyogre if it is no bulk, max speed, max special attack. If there is some bulk, it will do probably about 75% damage, and that is enough to ruin the Water Spout strategies. So if you lead Whimsicott Mewtwo against Tornadus Kyogre, then your Tailwind will go off and your Grass Knot will go off first, because Mewtwo is just naturally faster than Kyogre. So I think it's a pretty good set. It's just max speed, max special attack, but it's bulky enough just with its natural bulk to live in knockoffs from pretty powerful Pokemon like you saw. So I think it's a fun set. Second Pokemon is Entei with a Choice Scarf and Inner Focus, with Sacred Fire, Crunch, Stomping Tantrum, and Snarl. So I dropped, on a lot of Choice Scarf Enteis you'll see Stone Edge. I dropped Stone Edge for Snarl, just to give this team a better matchup against Xerneas and against Calyrex Shadow. Both those Pokemon are very dangerous on the special side, but after a couple Snarls, they are not really as dangerous, and it really only takes, against most Calyrex, only takes 2 Snarls to knock them out. But Crunch is also there to do a one-hit KO against Xerneas, or against Calyrex. I keep mixing those two up. But Crunch is a one-hit KO against Calyrex Shadow. And then Sacred Fire, as you saw, pairs really well with Milotic to scare off any Rillabooms coming onto the field. The third Pokemon is Whimsicott with Prankster and a Focus Sash, with Protect, Moonblast, Tailwind, and Encore. This Whimsicott is max HP, max speed, with just 1 point in special attack. But as you saw there, against an offensive Yveltal, Moonblast will still do over 50%. So don't be afraid to use it as an offensive option against dark types. I kind of got locked into the mindset that it's a support Pokemon, but it can be pretty offensive against dark types, and Encore is amazing. It's really trolly, but I love to Encore trap fake out users just because it's a lot of people don't really see it coming on fake out. It's usually there to lock people into protect, in my opinion, but protect and then Encore into fake out is such a good strategy. So the fourth Pokemon is Stakataka with a Beast Boost and a Chople Berry. Unfortunately, this Stakataka is max speed. I only have Ultra Sun, and this is the Pokemon I caught in the dens. Unfortunately, both of them were max speed because of the way the legendaries are treated now, where you have guaranteed 4 max stats. Unfortunately, both of my Stakatakas that I caught are max speed. So if anyone has a min speed Stakataka, then let me know, but unfortunately this one is not. But it's got Rock Slide, Gyro Ball, Trick Room, and Wide Guard. Rock Slide, as you saw, deals really, really easily with Volcarona. Gyro Ball is just amazing given Stakataka's low speed. Even with it being max speed, not max speed, but like max IVs, it still has 0 EVs in speed, so don't think I wasted a bunch of EVs on speed. But even with the max IVs and speed, Gyro Ball does a big chunk of damage to a lot of Pokemon. Second to last is Rillaboom, pretty generic. I like running Rillaboom. If you watch any of my videos, it's basically the same one. Grassy Glide, high horsepower, knockoff, fake out. I'm not as worried about Serena on this team, so I didn't have Woodhammer, and Knockout is great against Cali Shadow. The last Pokemon is the MVP, Milotic, with competitive and leftovers. Protects, Scald, Skitter Smack, and Recover. Scald cripples Zacians and Necrozma Duskmanes. Skitter Smack is kind of a niche attack. It again helps with Xerneas and Calyrex Shadow. But Milotic is my personal MVP. It's amazing, and people should run it more. But that's it for the team, so we will go into my outro. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really enjoying making these kind of niche Series 10 restricted teams. Mewtwo was a little bit harder than the previous ones. I think the hardest is still Zamazenta that I did, but Mewtwo is a little bit hard to build a team for, but Mewtwo, Entei, Milotic makes a really, really strong core, in my opinion. And its bulk over Calyrex Shadow does a really, really good job in making it stick around more, making you not have to worry so much about switching in and out, but still having very comparable damage. It doesn't have any spread attacks either, so even though it won't hit both Pokemon, the ability to kind of ignore Wide Guard users versus where Calyrex has to prioritize taking them out, switching in and out in perfect situations, Mewtwo doesn't really have that, so it's kind of a higher floor, lower ceiling, in my opinion, than Calyrex Shadow. If you're a newer player, Calyrex Shadow is really tempting to spam on teams, but it takes a lot more skill than you'd expect to just know when to switch it in and out. Obviously, you can run like the lead teams where the goal is to just overwhelm your opponent with damage, but if the opponent has any kind of Wide Guard or any kind of priority moves, then that's not really as good if they get train control. So, I don't know. It's an interesting team. I hope you guys liked it. Next week, maybe Calyrex Shadow. I'm not sure. I've got a couple teams built already. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. This team I recorded right before the season ended. So this next season I have to get up to Master Ball, and then I'll start recording videos again. I don't really like to record any battles until I'm in Master Ball. Just personal preference. But I don't know what restricted is going to be next. But if I do run my Calyrex Shadow, just a quick preview is that I told myself I was not going to use any of the most common support Pokemon for Calyrex Shadow. So I have a very interesting Sandstorm team for Calyrex. So that's what I'm working on now, and it should be uploaded as soon as it's done, the next Saturday after it's finished. So hopefully you stick around if you want to see that, or if you want to see any of the other restricteds I'm going to be making teams for. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because I'm going to keep doing these. And then when I run out of restricteds I like, I may do Nuzlockes, or I may just keep continuing with the ones I'm not as big of a fan of. So like and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off.